Hey, this is Tyler with Tech again. Today I'm going to show you how to replace the old style carburetor with the new style. The old style here will be the pull push ring choke style, which you can tell of course by this pull ring right here. And then on the bottom of the old carburetor you'll have this solenoid, which the new style will get rid of the pull push ring and the solenoid assembly right here. So let's get into that. First things you're going to need, basically take this apart. You're going to have two sockets, one at 8mm, one at 10mm. You won't be able to get in there with the wrench. And then possibly a needle nose pliers, something to take your fuel line off if it's on there tight. So, first thing you want to do, pretty sure your engine's still going to be attached to the frame, gas tank. You're going to want to make sure you turn your fuel off with your on-off valve right below the fuel tank. And then what we'll do is just undo these two clips for your air filter cover. Pull that off. You got your foam filter right here. And pull that out. If it's dirty, it'd be a good time to take it out. Clean it in some hot soap and water. Put a little bit of oil back on it. And when you put everything back together, you can just put that back up in there. And we'll need to take off these 6 bolts surrounding this this filter cage. These are going to be 8mm bolts. So let's get into that. There's no real particular order you got to take them off in. They're not supposed to be on there very tight, so nothing to worry about binding. Alright, that just pulls up out of there. Next, you got these two 10mm that hold this back plating on. And you'll need to take out this little hose, your overhead valve vent hose, to get to that 110 right there. And it just basically pops out of its spot right here. It'll come up out of there. Got your 10mm. And on some of the units back here, this one's been disconnected since it's not on the engine, but there is another 10mm that holds this support bracket onto the back side of this back plating. Some units also have this vent hose that goes up into your fuel tank. You won't really need to remove that. You can just set this whole piece up out of the way somewhere and you should be good. Alright. Next thing, like I said, make sure your fuel's off. You need to remove your fuel hose right here. Like I said, if it's on there tight, you may need some needle noses to get it up off of there, especially if you've never changed the carburetor or had to remove the hose. But they should just slide right off. Alright. Then what you just have to do, like you've seen right there, this valve assembly, it just pulls right off. You will have your one-way vacuum line that'll wrap around to the back. You just pull that hose off right there, off your insulator block, and you can remove that. Now, as far as your solenoid, you can do one of two things. You can take these wires, you can snip them, and then just tape them right back up, or you can trace it down, and at the end of this, you're going to have a ground wire, then another male wire that will plug in. Usually it plugs in either up in your control panel or it'll plug into your CDI box. I mean, it's up to you if you want to trace them down, remove them completely, or if you just want to snip them. It doesn't really make a difference because you won't be using this ever again, really. Alright, so next what you need to do is go up here and remove your linkage right here, your linkage and spring. Easiest way to remove it is just pull your carburetor out a little bit. You don't got to take it off all the way. And then open your flap and it will pop right out of there. And you'll see your linkage and your spring, they both have the spot for them, so you won't be able to mix that up as far as that goes. Your spring's got its little tiny hole right there, it's got to go back in. Your linkage slides into this slit right here, then locks into place. So when you reassemble it, it's not that hard to get them mixed up. Alright, just pull the carburetor off. Like I said, if you snipped them or traced the line down, it'll all come off there. You should be good to go. The last thing will be this insulator block. This block will have to be changed out because the new one will not use this vacuum nipple. And if you do not replace this, what's going to happen is it's going to suck air and your unit's going to run bad. Basically, it'll start loping and it's not going to run right as long as that nipple is still intact. New carburetor is going to come with all new gaskets, so make sure you move everything to the cylinder head down to your aluminum. If you got built up right here or anything, just if there's any big chunks, knock them off so it's all flush, and then you can get to putting on your new carburetor. Okay, when you order a new carburetor assembly, basically what you're going to get is a complete carburetor. You see this bowl? It's going to be a standard bowl, no solenoid in the bottom. It's got that little nut right there. Now, if you're wondering, you cannot replace this bowl with the old one because the nut that goes up into the old style is actually hollow, and it's that pin, it's all set for that. So if you were to put this nut in there, basically it would block off your main intake for your main jet there, and you wouldn't suck any fuel at all. So you really can't get away with replacing the bottom end of the old style to fix anything down there. You would have to purchase a whole new carburetor. But when you do purchase one, you'll get the carburetor, you'll get all 3 new gaskets, and like I was saying, you'll get this new insulator block. You see, compared to this one, it basically gets rid of that nipple right there, and it's not going to have the hole, so you're not going to have to suck any air. Don't worry about that. Alright, as far as putting it back together, I mean, it's just you gotta get that main gasket on first, back one against your cylinder head. Then you go with the insulator block. You see the block's got this overflow port built into it. If for some reason your needle sticks on your carburetor, it just keeps pumping gas through it. This is to prevent it from running all into your cylinder head. So flat goes straight to the cylinder. Port's facing towards you when you put it on. Just push that in there. You want to make sure you put your spark plug line back in. We'll have to do that later on. Then next you'll have this gasket. You see this gasket's got this little hole in the top right hand corner. You want to put it on here. So the hole is at the very top of that port that I was telling you about. So it'll just sit right up in there. And then basically your carburetor goes on next. Carburetor choke should always be facing towards you. Just slide that on. I said you want to put this about halfway so you can put your linkage back in here. I find it easiest to put your spring on first, get it in its little hole. Try to get it so y'all can see here. Then you're going to want to open your flap and pull your linkage towards the carburetor and push it down into its spot. Once you get it down there, it'll snap into its little groove and you should be good to go. If your linkage comes completely apart, if you look at this end, this is how your spring will go back in. Your linkage will go from one arm to the very outer of your governor rod, and then basically your spring will lapse over it and go towards the inside of your governor. A lot of times people get that confused and they try to run the spring straight into this hole, which is not correct. It needs to overlap and spring in the back hole. linkage on the front. Alright, now we got the carburetor on. Last thing is this gasket. You see the front of this carburetor? The gasket matches right up to it. This port should go up around this hole. This port should go around there. You can get them on backwards, but usually you'll definitely tell if it's on there the wrong way. So now we got that back on. Only thing left is to put our housing back on here. It is easiest before put the housing on to get your fuel line hooked back up. Just because it is kind of a pain to get back up in there once everything is put together. Just push your fuel line back up on there. Should be nice and snug. If it is very loose on the carburetor, you may need to go buy some new fuel line. Over time, they can stretch and get brittle. So if yours is brittle or cracked, or is not, doesn't make a nice tight fit on the carburetor fuel inlet, I would recommend getting a whole new line and replacing that while you're doing this. Alright, next, basically, push this back on here. Everything lined up. And then put your 10mm back in. None of this stuff has to be really, really tight. I mean, just a little, just to snug down. Keep everything nice and compressed there. Like I've said in previous videos, you really want to make sure you get your bolts and nuts on with your fingers before using an impact, because like you almost saw there, I almost cross-threaded it. And that wouldn't be good. You have to replace that whole carburetor stud. Alright, once that's on, some units do have a little flap that comes down here, a separate piece. This one doesn't, but if you do have that flap there, I would recommend bolting it back up on there with the with that rear housing. Alright, I'm just pushing this filter cage back in, and we're going to switch back to the 8mm and put these back in. Alright, once you got this on, like I said, if you cleaned your filter and everything, oil it back up, just push it back into its spot, and that should be good to go. Last but not least, you want to make sure you put your hose back in, just for the fact that if you don't have it in, what this hose really does is it pushes unburned emissions from the overhead valve, oil, anything from your load case that gets pushed up, and it basically just recycles it all back through your carburetor intake. So it's good to have there, because definitely you'll have a bunch of oil and everything coming out of your overhead valve cover if you don't have this pushed in here. Alright, so that's in. You got your cover. Your cover, the back side, you'll see it's got this rectangle welded in here, this open port on the bottom. That's just to fit over all this stuff. It will only go on one way, and it should go on fairly easy, so if you're having any issues, just pull it back off and take a look. Pull your choke to the right hand side so you can get it in there, and basically you see they just have the clips on the back. Push your clips and then tighten her back down, and that should do it. Now you just basically should be able to turn your gas back on, and hopefully one or two pulls should fire right up on you. Like I said, if you have any questions or comments, you can just email me, or if you want to talk to anybody up front, the number is 1-800-845-4141. We'd be glad to help you over the phone, or if you need to order any parts. But hope this video helped you, and if you have any suggestions, let me know.